Hello, everyone. Sorry for the delay. Apparently, I forgot to press go. So I was talking to myself. Welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor live stream. Oh, my goodness. It's been a minute since we've been here. And this week, we're going to be talking about exposure. How to correct exposure in photo editing, and also some tips for you to get it right in the camera as well, because you want to get the best image into your photo editing software to begin with, right? Better product in, better product out. And conversely, we've all heard this phrase, garbage in, garbage out. So tell us where you're joining from today if you haven't already done that in the chat. And we have a quick little survey for you as well. We want to know, what is your primary photo editor? What are you using? Rob, could you pop that survey up? And I'll just see who is here already. Oh, Jenny from Italy, welcome. Is that your first time joining us? Tom, I have your images there, Tom, as you can see. Under a cover of snow. Oh, you get snow in Calgary today. We do not have snow in Edmonton, so I bet you it's coming our way as well. Julia from Maryland. Debbie, Wisconsin. Always great to see everybody. Daniel from California. Stephanie, great topic. Awesome. So if you could do the little survey, are they answering it now, Rob? Richard from Maryland. Rob has a question for everybody about exposure. Do you think that's a webinar topic? Is that something you'd like to see a webinar on? So both of these things that I'm talking about now. David, nice to see you as always. Okay, so Rob is saying we've got some answers, about 50-50 right now. So I think we're going to have to do a split one on this one, Rob, because we've got half and half. So half of you are using Luminar, 54% Lightroom, and 38% Luminar. So if you haven't done the survey, just fill that in. New Zealand, welcome. Wow, we've got some new tuners in, new watchers here. Marshall from Saudi Arabia, welcome. And Colin from the UK. And Rex from New Zealand. What time is it in New Zealand right now, Rex? Yes, Rob is making a map of all of our viewers. So that's awesome. Keep telling us where you're from. We're mapping you all. And Jenny's in Italy, Rob. Make sure you get that as well. Whereabouts in Italy, Jenny? I know that Carnival is started, I think, today in Venice, right? 4 years ago, I was in Carnival. So where are you from in Italy, Jenny? If you're comfortable sharing your city. Yes, if you're comfortable sharing your city. Eagle River, Alaska, above zero. Awesome. Oh, it's 10 a.m. in New Zealand. Okay, great. So those of you in Europe must be late in the day. So I don't want to delay too long. Since we're getting a mix, and Jenny's in Genoa. Okay, awesome. Since we're getting a mix of Lightroom and Luminar, I'm going to do a little bit of both. So I've got a lot of images from people that are using Luminar, so I'm going to start there. But I'm using Lightroom because it shows me the metadata a little bit larger, and we can take a look at it. So there's a few things that I want to look at. And since Tom is here, I'm going to start with yours, Tom. Okay, so when we're talking about exposure, and I know Rob's going to shout at me to change the screen. There we go. So when we're talking about exposure, I'm talking about, okay, not just this, but let me open the histogram. So your exposure information, let me turn on my little pointer as well. There we go. So I'm talking about the exposure information, like what did you use for ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, okay? Also, what shooting mode did you use? In this case, he's used aperture priority. So did you use program? Did you use aperture priority, shutter priority, manual, and so on, okay? And then we're also talking about how much light actually hit the sensor, okay? So you may have heard that term before, Rob. You're gonna have to get busy getting some articles in the links here. So the first one is photo terms. I think there was one that I did on like definitions of things. So exposure value, you may have seen that written as EV. So it means exposure value. Okay, so how much light, the quantity of light that's hit the sensor. Okay, and the histogram is a big part of telling you about that. Okay, so definitions, Rob, first. And also, I want the why is your snow gray? Because that one fits this image right here. Andreas from Germany, welcome. Wow, we got lots all over the world right now. That's awesome. How's it going with those links, Rob? All right, so why is the snow gray is a good question. So when we look at the histogram, what the histogram no, why is the snow gray article and article on um, definitions of photography definitions, please. Well, then this looks, Sheila says there was a huge snowstorm, so this looks familiar to you then, Sheila. So the histogram represents your what tones are in your image. Okay, so on the right is white, on the left is black, and in the middle is gray. Okay, and then how high each thing goes. Imagine these are 365 small bar graphs. Okay, from 0, which is black, to 365, which is white. Okay, um, how high it goes up to the top here is how many of those tones are there in your image. So what this graph is telling us is that there's a little bit of stuff on the dark end, so that would be the trees. There's nothing on pure white, okay? So what does that tell us? Slightly underexposed, okay? There's a gap here. And then there's a bunch of stuff that's sort of light gray. This is a light gray zone, okay? So this is telling me that this image is actually underexposed, okay? Because snow should be what color? White. So when you're photographing, you want to make sure that your histogram is visible when you're either taking the picture. If you have a mirrorless camera, you can see the histogram when you're taking the picture, and definitely on playback. So when you take a picture like this, so Tom, for your reference, when you're out taking snow, and if it's snowy in Calgary, you can go and do this now, or right after it snows, it'll be pretty, right? Make sure that your graph is touching the right-hand side, right? So you want it touching, but not going over, right? And I'll show you what that looks like. So let's go into develop. Oh, Tom wants his in Luminar. Okay, so I'm going to go into Luminar with the same image. Okay, so we're going to take this image into develop, and it's a JPEG. Okay, so we don't have the raw information to work with, which is going to be a slight limitation, but it shouldn't be a major problem because it's underexposed. If it was overexposed, and I'll show you another image that's on that scale, right, we're going to be missing detail, right? So the first thing we want to do is go to develop. And I recently, did I do a video on curves, Rob? I can't remember what I even published recently. I was going to do a quick one on curves. I'm going to do a quick video on curves, but I recently redid the curves video inside the Luminar Neo class. So if you have the Luminar Neo course, go back and watch that one again on develop, because I redid this one. Now you'll notice when you open the curves panel here, you could see the histogram as well. So if I want to correct this underexposure issue, I'm not going to use the exposure slider, because exposure slider actually pushes the image from the middle. Okay, so it's adjusting more of the midtones. You can see that if I do that, it eventually gets over there to white. Right? I want the information on the graph touching the edge. Right? There's a simple way to do that in Lightroom, which is the shift double click trick. I'll show you that on a different image. Okay, but there isn't a shift double click trick in Luminar. So this is what I do instead. I press J to turn on the clipping warnings, and you see these little circles highlight. And then I use curves to tuck it in on the bottom here on the right. So I'm tucking in until I start to see some clipping. So I'm just going to go to extreme. Okay, so now you can see what's happening is I'm clipping the snow, meaning it's going off the graph. You can see it going off the graph. Okay. And that will have no detail in these areas. Okay, so I'm clipping, and then I'm just going to bring it back until I don't have any of that. Okay, so now I know that it's touching the edge, but not going off. See that? and it's brought it really nicely over to the edge, and I haven't touched the exposure slider, okay? I'm probably going to bring the highlights down a little bit. So this is dance again, because I want to have some detail in here. And then if I want to go at a smaller amount, people often ask me, when would I use curves versus the black and the white slider? Curves can go a lot farther, faster. Okay. If I go further, I can make this picture all white. Okay. But I can't do that. I can't do that with the white slider. Okay. If I take the whites all the way, I can't make it pure white. Okay. I do want to also increase the blacks. Okay, so I'm going to do the same on this side of the histogram because there's no blacks clipping right now. And in most cases, you want to have a little bit of black clipping, and that's indicated with this blue marker. Okay, remember I've got the J key, the highlights, clipping warnings on. That's the J key. So the keyboard shortcut, please, Rob. You can get our free PDF Luminar Neo keyboard shortcuts cheat sheet. Rob's going to put a link to that in the chat for you as well. If you want to know the keys that I'm pressing, I have a shortcut cheat sheet for you. Okay, so just by tucking this in, I'm going to get some black. Okay, now what I've done is I've tucked this in on both sides, and now you can see that it's stretched the histogram out, meaning I've got more contrast. If we just look at the before and after, see how much more punch it has, okay? And I don't even know if we need to do much more on exposure here, right? This part here is sort of pure white and there's not a lot of detail here, but the light is very flat and overcast, right? It's kind of hazy, and I don't know we're going to get any detail out of there, okay? So this is as far as I would go with this, okay? Like so. We can also check to make sure there's no chromatic aberration. And of course, we're JPEG, so we don't get that option here. Defringe is the only one. So when we look close, where you would see a fringe, if there is one, is anywhere between something that's dark and something that's light, like the sky. And I don't see a problem here, okay? Noise reduction, I don't see that noise reduction needs to be done here. It looks pretty good, okay? We can increase the sharpness a little bit here, but don't go too crazy because you don't have a lot of control this way. I usually just do a little bit of sharpening here on the raw. And if you want to keep the sky from going too grainy, you watch what happens if I increase the sky. You'll start to get some grain showing up in the sky. Can you see that? Okay, by bringing the masking up, look at that. Okay, no masking, sky is grainy. Masking, sky is not grainy. Okay, now I've gone to extreme with this just to show you what the masking does. Okay, so when you are sharpening using these sliders, okay, increasing the masking means that anything that is smooth in the image will not get sharpened, such as sky. Okay, this is very important. So I'm going to just bring this down to about here. Again, I keep it minimal. Okay. And in terms of color, I'm going to actually leave this one because I think this one would be really, really pretty in black and white, Tom. Because it's basically the only color is this bridge here. So I'm not going to worry too much about color. But if you want to make your winter scenes neutral, of course, you can just use the eyedropper, right? So eyedropper, click on anything that you want to be neutral, like snow, right? And it went a little bit more yellow than I would have liked. See that? So I'm just going to leave it the way it was because I'm going to go black and white. Okay, but that's how you can correct your snow. All right, next, I'm going to add some structure and detail. Okay, so structure, right, brings out all of this stuff in the snow and the hoarfrost. Again, I'm taking it to extreme because look what happens. You end up getting a halo around the sky and it does some noise in the sky. Okay, so one thing with these is take it easy and we're going to mask it off the sky. Okay. I think if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to do a mask. We could do AI and have it come off the sky, or the simple way to do it is honestly just make a radial gradient and just stretch it across the middle like this, right? Just so it's on the trees. There we go. Okay, and then I can copy this mask because I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to add some details. So again, when you're doing this, make sure you zoom in. Be very careful of going crazy with small details, because what happens is you end up with this thing that looks like, I don't even know. It just hurts my eyes. There's so many details. It actually hurts my eyes. Okay, so be careful with small details. Right? We can make sure, again, keep it off the smooth things. That's what masking does. Okay. I think large details actually works better on this one to bring out things like the branches. So I'm going to go with large details and sharpen the large details. Okay. Like so. Okay. Now let's do the black and white. Black and white conversion. Shouldn't be much to adjust here, right? I mean, if anything, yeah, red is just adjusting the bridge. So if I want the bridge to be darker, other than that, I don't see much else. There's not a lot of other colors in here anywhere. Okay, the bridge has some yellow as well. So if we want the bridge darker, that's about it. Okay. I think that looks really pretty in black and white, right? Cropping. Would we crop this one? The thing about this image here is this part is your subject, okay? So I'm thinking of cropping some of the bottom off, because the third down here is all this big block of snow, okay? So let's just see what composition AI would do with this one. Once again, it comes in quite a bit, and usually what I find with composition AI is that the amount is good, but I usually want to move it around, okay? I like the bridge, and I want to keep the bridge, but I disagree with cropping off this end. So I'm going to do my own freeform crop and just come in from the bottom up to about there. Okay? I want to get rid of this little thing at the bottom here, as well as a big chunk of the white, but keep the base here, okay? And then if there's any little sticks, we can just erase them out, okay? And I think this would be much stronger as a more panoramic image. Wait for it. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to add a vignette to finish it. And the thing with the vignette is we can actually go this way. Okay. So most people think of vignette as dark edge, but you can also go light edge. Okay. So because we've cropped, I need to bring it in a little bit. Right. And then position it. Something like that. Okay. I bring the feather down to 0, and then we can see it where the vignette's going. Bring this either all the way up or all the way down, okay? And then choose your positioning, okay? Then once you've got it where you want it, bring the feather back up, okay? Now you can see that it's sort of just fading out to white on the ends, right? If I don't want it to come in so much, right, we can just adjust it. So see what that's doing? It's just softening that edge. Really pretty. Rob says it looks like a greeting card. It kind of does. There you go, Tom. There's your Christmas greeting card for next year. Okay. All right. Any questions? Let's see. So everybody's talking about snow. Sheila seconds that notion about greeting cards. Okay. All right. So that's the first one. Really nice image, Tom. I love the hoarfrost. And for those of you who live in, a warmer climate like New Zealand, hoarfrost happens when it's really moist. Yeah, you get like almost like a fog, and it's like stuck to the trees, and it's just so pretty. Let me have a sip of my coffee and we'll continue. Okay, so that one was a little bit underexposed, okay? Now, here's something interesting. This image was submitted by, let me find it here, Kevin Roscoe. And Kevin is in the Luminar course, and And I apologize, Kevin, for not getting to this one in the last live that we did for the Luminar course. Um, and this one has the same kind of scenario. Okay. Now I'm guessing he took this at a high shutter speed because he was probably taking it from a boat, I'm guessing. And I'm also guessing maybe Antarctica. So look at the histogram this time. Okay. When you use your camera meter and you're using any of the metering modes, even manual, and you set your exposure yourself, your camera is measuring the light bouncing off of whatever it is you're pointing it at. A little dog just went by. I was just making sure he wasn't by himself. It's measuring whatever you're pointing it at and measuring the light coming back from the subject. So it's what's called reflective light metering. And when the subject is all white, the camera doesn't know that. Okay. And what the camera's trying to do with the meter is make medium gray. Okay. So if you can look at the histogram here, it's been successful. It made gray. But is this subject gray? It's not, right? So one of the things that you could have done here, Kevin, is open the aperture a little more. Excuse me. Open the aperture a lot more, actually, because you're quite far away from this subject. Okay, you've got focal length of 50, so you're not super wide here. You're far enough away from this subject and it's equidistant. You could have shot this at f2.8 or f4 and still have enough sharpness. Okay, that would have allowed you to lower the ISO. So shutter speed is good if you're on a boat. You want to make sure you counteract any movements of the boat. Okay, but open that aperture. Okay, so open the aperture. All right, so let's take this one into Luminar again. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick trick here, because I think this one would look nice as a panoramic as well. So recently I did an article on batch processing. Actually, I did a video on batch processing in Luminar Neo. And Rob, if you could share that one, it's on the YouTube channel. So it's one of the most recent videos on batch processing. So to do that, you can just copy and paste. Okay, that's one way. So you can right click on this and choose copy adjustments. Or if you've got those keyboard shortcuts, Command or Control C. So I'm going to copy. And then when you go to this one, you have to be in the catalog module to do this. You can paste the adjustments. Excuse me. Okay, I'm going to give it a minute. It's going to adjust. Okay, now it didn't adjust the crop. And of course, it went black and white. But now we have a really good starting point. Okay, this one is a lot grainier. And I don't think I'm going to go black and white. So I'm going to remove a couple of the things. I'm going to remove the vignette. I'm going to remove the black and white. But right out of the gate, look what we've got here, right? And I didn't paste that mask in. I should have pasted that mask from this one. I forgot about that, okay? But the mask is here, okay? So use the same mask that I did on the other one, okay? And I think I'm going to do it a little differently here. So I'm going to clear it. And I'm just going to paint it in. So I'm going to get a big brush and I just want it there. Okay. Then I'm going to copy this mask. Copy. And paste it into the details mask or the details tool. Okay. Now there's a couple of other things. So if we look at the before and after, you see how much texture that's brought out? I think it's actually too much. I think the snow could handle more. So I'm going to dial these back a little bit. Same with this one. Okay. But copying, pasting, right, got us pretty darn close. Right. The other thing you'll notice is that we have develop raw here. Okay, so we could come back to develop raw and work with a camera profile. Okay, so landscape gives us more color right out of the gate. Okay, and if we want to adjust the color, we can now use the eyedropper. Okay, a little bit cooler, brings out more blue. Can you see that? So we could play with that a little bit. When we lower this, you get more of that blue color, okay? And this time we have chromatic aberration, and I usually just check that off, right? You can also see a couple of issues here, okay? So what I'm seeing is this is sharp and the edge is not. So you might want to check your lens, Kevin, for edge to edge sharpness, okay? Because that can be an issue with some lenses. See how it's not sharp on the edge, but it is here? And you could also see a lot of grain. You could see it up in the sky here, okay? And that's from that high ISO. So we'll work with that as well. I am going to do a crop on this one, okay? So let's come back here into the crop. And I'm going to go freeform and do panorama. But I'm also going to make sure that the horizon is straight. So let's see. I don't think that's correct. So I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm looking at this part here with the water. So I'm going to try and make the water straight. That looks about right. And then come in. Oops. Let's go freeform. So the thing with this image is there's a third of the image that is water and it's not really adding anything. So I'm just going to get rid of most of it, bring it in. And then there's a whole bunch of blank sky that's not adding anything either. So this is way more of a panoramic image. Okay. Let's keep the edges. Wait for it to pop into place. There we go. Okay. So that's way stronger. If anything, I might actually do even a little bit less water. Move that up even more like that. Okay, because what is the subject here? So the idea with your editing is you want to make the subject stand out. You can do that by sharpening the subject and blurring the other bits. You can do that by enhancing contrast on the subject and also how much space it physically takes up in the image. Okay. There's an article I did on visual mass, Rob, if you could please share that one. Okay, now let's deal with this noise problem, okay? You'll notice that we've got noiseless AI here, but we've also got noiseless raw. So when we come back to the edit panel, even if you've applied other things, develop raw and noiseless raw are always down here, okay? So I'm going to start with this one. And it's suggesting that I use middle. So I'm just going to do that and let it run. No, I don't have birds in my office, Rob. Although we did hear coyotes howling last night, like literally howling on our street. And we live in the middle of the city. It's a big problem here in Edmonton. Okay, so now you can see that it's done a really good job on the noise, but it's still keeping the detail on the iceberg, right? So I think it's done a really good job. If you want to increase it, right, keep in mind that as you increase this, it tends to blur things, okay? So noise reduction and sharpness have to have a balance, right? Because as we increase details, you get the noise back, right? As we increase sharpness, you get the noise back. But as you increase the luminosity slider, which is denoise, it desharpens as well. So denoise is kind of like desharpen. So you have to find a balance somewhere in the middle, okay? But look at what a great job it's doing. See that? Then once I close it and it applies all the other things, we get our contrast and our details back, okay? Then if you feel like you still need to do some more noise reduction, you can go again, okay? But now it's noiseless here. You also have denoise here, which I find does a really good job as well. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back into 200%. Right, there's still a bit of noise there, but to me, it's not really objectionable. I think it's fine. And what I'm going to do on this one is add some mystical anyways, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. So let's add a little bit of an edge vignette. Now remember, it's going to be off the image because I cropped. Okay. So I can either adjust it. Let's go a little bit this way. It's going to just kind of darken the edges, right? Let's play around with that. There we go, something like that. I just want to darken the edges, but not that much, okay? Something like that. And then I adjust the amount, just ever so subtle, okay? Again, darken the edges, subtle, draws your eye into the middle again, back to the subject, okay? You can also use inner light, which brings a little bit more light into the center of the image. Okay? Now let's look at our histogram again, okay? So now I've done a whole bunch of adjustments. Do I need to go back and adjust the histogram? Perhaps, right? So I could go back to the original develop raw, or I could just go from here. Okay, so remember, turn on the clipping warnings, go until you get clipping, and then just dial it back. And the same with the black. Now, when I get more black, we're going to get more color. See that? I talk about this all the time. If your image has no color, add blacks. Okay, look at the difference. Look at the difference with this tool. Okay, and all I'm doing is adjusting the black and the white point. Okay, if we want the midtones to be a little brighter, which is the gray bits, we can increase exposure. See how it pushes everything over to the right. Okay, like so. There we go. I might decide to go back here and actually change this vignette to a light vignette. Let's go the opposite way. Okay, so now it's light on the edges. Okay, so you can go either way with this one, I think, because it's kind of foggy back here. But how pretty is that, right? Now there's another tool that's one of my favorites, and that is down here under Professional Color Harmony, right? This one allows you to add color contrast to a particular color. Now, in this case, we want to bring more color into this ice, right, in the water. Okay, so whatever color you are over, it adds brightness and contrast to. Okay, so over here, I'm brightening the blue. But look what happened when I was over here on yellow and orange. Okay, it actually darkens the blue and gives us more color there as well. Okay. You can also shift colors here. Oh, look at that. Okay, so it makes the cools cooler. So it makes the blues more cool. And we don't have a lot of warm in here, so it's not really doing anything. Okay. But look what that did. Look at that. Doesn't it feel cold now? Okay. Let's look at the before and after. Okay. And then my final step on this one would be either glow or mystical. I kind of prefer mystical on landscape images, and it can give you this really beautiful softness. Okay. Now remember that mask I pasted. I can paste that same mask back in again, but invert it this time. So now I'm doing more of a glow on the water and the sky. Okay. And maybe I'll just do the iceberg or glacier. It could be a glacier at 45%. So it's not getting as much of the glow. Okay. See, it enhances the fog, which leads me to another thought, which is atmosphere AI. Okay, so atmosphere AI can give you some more fog. So there's already fog there. So let's play with this. I don't want the fog to be over the iceberg. But look what's happening here. We get a little bit of fog in the foreground, maybe. There we go. That's kind of neat. Mist is more in the sky. I don't use this one a lot, to be honest. But you could certainly play around with this. I think the layered fog was probably the best. And that's just bringing some fog into the foreground. Okay. Something like that. So there's our before, kind of dull and gray, right? Punched up the exposure and the color. All right, I see a question. What can be done to sharpen the edges? Is it a flaw with the lens? Yes, it is a flaw with the lens, and there's not much you can do. That has to do, yeah, with edge sharpness. What you can do is find the what's called, oh, I can't remember the name of the name of the term now. It's the optimal aperture for your lens, a sweet spot. There it is. That's what it is. You can find the sweet spot for your lens, which means the aperture that is the sharpest, and it's usually a couple of apertures down from wide open. Um, Rob says crop the images off, crop the edges off. Yeah, you could. Or let's see what happens if we go in here and we run super sharp AI. Let's run middle. Okay, so it's going to take a minute to run this, and then I could just apply it to the edges. Okay, so let's just see how this does and just apply it on the edges. But yes, great question. Okay. Waiting. This is one that I don't use a lot. I just did the lesson on this one actually a while ago in the Luminar course because I'm not such a huge fan of this particular tool. I just realized I don't even have my backlight on. Rob didn't even tell me I don't have my backlight on, or the other one. I'm just discombobulated today because I haven't. Where's my remote? Can't even find my remote. There it is. I haven't done this in a couple weeks, so I kind of forgot what I'm doing. I think the battery's dead on that one. We're not going to get the other one. Yeah, see, this is why I don't use this tool, because look what's happening. It just takes forever, and I don't know if it's actually... Oh, there we go. Okay, so now let's zoom in, and we're looking at the edges, so let's see how it did. Okay, see how it's doing a weird thing here? Look at that. But it's doing a decent job here. So I would use this one sparingly and just paint it in, right? So I'm just going to paint it in to the edges of the actual iceberg where I want the sharpness, avoiding that part that went weird up there. So see how that's making it sharper? Just go in as far as you need to go to cover that sharpness issue. And then we go to the other side. Let's do the same thing. How's that? That looks better. Look at that. Nice detail. There you go. So, in fact, it did help. Great question. And there we fixed it. So remember to use the masking of the tools, right? Really important to use masking because you want it to apply sparingly, okay, to certain things. The other thing we could do is to really get serious on a vignette, right? Like I did earlier, we could just make the edges kind of go off to white, right? So we sharpened them, but you could also just make them sort of blur out to white, okay? Another option. All right, so there's our before and after. Fixed a lot of issues. Two great winter images, okay? And both of those were underexposed, right? Now we're going to look at the opposite issue. We've got two that are overexposed, okay? This one from Tom. So I'm going to come back to Lightroom again just to look at the exposure information. Okay, so we've got ISO 1600 f8 at 1/2500th of a second. Okay, so Tom, if you're still here, tell me tell me a little bit about why you chose these settings. Okay, and I'm looking at, he's chosen aperture priority. Okay, so he's chosen the aperture and the camera has chosen the shutter speed. But my question then is, why ISO 1600? Okay, it's daytime. You don't need ISO 1600. And my guess is what's happened is you've almost hit the upper end of your shutter speed and the camera has overexposed it. Okay, so lowering the aperture here to 400 or 200 or even auto ISO, okay, would have probably given you a better exposure as well. Okay, The other thing to look for is, remember I talked about exposure EV? Look at this number here. So it says 0.33 EV. So that means that it is plus 1/3 EV, or it's telling the camera to give it 1/3 of a stop overexposure. Okay. It's not very much, okay, but it is telling the camera to overexpose a little bit. Okay. On the other end of the scale, there was this one here that was sent in by Ken, right? And this one was shot in manual mode at ISO 25,000 f4 at 1,000th of a second. Okay. Now I know why he's shooting at 1,000th of a second, right? Because he's shooting a moving target, the dog. A couple of things I would have changed in camera here. He's using a 70 to 200 mil f2.8 lens. Anytime you're photographing indoors, or you're photographing where there's low light, or you're photographing a moving subject, open that aperture wide. Okay. So I would have shot in aperture priority here at f2.8, right? You can go auto ISO, and automatically the camera is going to give you the fastest shutter speed possible based on those settings. Okay. If you're not getting a fast enough shutter speed, you can set it to manual like he did here. Okay. Set your aperture, set your shutter speed, and the camera will choose the ISO. So that's possibly what occurred here. Okay. Yeah, it looks like he set the ISO to that on purpose, but it's set to minus 2.67 EV. Can you see that? So minus 2 2/3 of stop. So it's told the camera to underexpose by 2 2/3 stops. Okay. When you're shooting a Nikon, even in manual mode, this will apply. So it's told the camera to underexpose. Okay. Tom said he forgot his glasses, couldn't see the details. On this particular one here, Tom. Yeah, so just if you're photographing this type of event again, share some articles, Rob. We've got one on using low light, and then we've got another one on sports photography, and that might help him as well. So if you could find those links for those articles, please, Rob. When you're doing things like low light, aperture wide open, okay? And I highly recommend aperture priority mode, but what you've done with manual mode works as well, as long as you're in auto ISO, okay? So set your aperture to 2.8, set your shutter speed to say 1,000 or 2,000 of a second, and then let the ISO fall where it may, okay? Okay, so let me get back to this one, which is overexposed. Okay. So this one was sent in by Oscar, and this one is overexposed. Okay. So it's ISO 400, f4 at 400th of a second, and also shot in manual mode. So the thing that you need to be really careful of when you're using manual mode, and this is why I don't recommend manual unless you're really familiar with it. And the only time that I use manual mode is actually when I'm using a tripod. So anytime that I have time to put my camera on a tripod, organize my thoughts, and set the exposure, and I have time to take a test and do it again. So a subject like this that's not moving, right? It looks like the trees that I photographed in Madeira, like the Fanal forest. So I don't know if Oscar is watching or not. He says he's from Spain, so could be Madeira. Anytime I'm photographing a subject like this that is not moving, take your time. You can use manual mode, okay? But take a shot, check the histogram, and then do another one. Because if we, oh, you are here. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Welcome, bienvenido. So when you're doing this kind of thing, check the histogram in camera before you continue, okay? So take a shot and then move on. So is this the Fanal Forest in Madeira, Oscar? I'm curious. Okay, so how do we solve this one? Okay, because when we look at the histogram, okay, I'm going to take this into Luminar, which is the preferred software again. Okay, when we look at the histogram, okay, and we turn on the clipping warnings, the entire sky is clipping. Okay, not Fanal Forest. Okay, similar kinds of trees. Yeah, very similar. And this is the one you said you were having trouble replacing the sky, correct? Okay, because you wanted to replace the sky on this one. I think this is the one you had said you wanted a sky replacement. North of Spain. Okay, cool. Well, now I want to go to the north of Spain. Okay, so he said he wants to replace the sky. So let's correct the exposure before we work on the sky, okay? Because the exposure you can see is off the graph, okay? So this time we can't fix it by using the sliders here, okay? I've got to bring the exposure down first, okay? So when I bring the exposure down, we're getting a little bit more detail in the sky, and you can start to see some stuff here, okay? Still clipping. Let's bring the highlights down, okay? That's helping, right? We're never going to get detail in this sky here because it's so overexposed that you'll just get gray, okay? So when you have a subject that's backlit, if it's really strongly backlit, you may have to bracket and use HDR, okay? The other thing is we could actually try this one in the HDR module. So that we're going to do two different things here, okay? So we're going to do this one way, and then we're going to try a single image HDR on it, okay? And see what happens. I want to make sure we fix any chromatic aberration. I am seeing a little bit here. Okay, so what chromatic aberration looks like is you'll see a little red fringe, and I'm just seeing kind of a little bit of color there, so I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do defringe as well, okay? So now we've already got a whole bunch more color, okay? And we've got control of the clippings. This may help with the sky replacement as well, okay? So I'm just bringing the highlights down until it's not clipping anymore. Like so. Okay. Again, a tiny bit of sharpening. Keep the masking on the sky. Okay. Oh, one thing I forgot to do was color. Okay, so while I'm in here, we can also work on the color. So I can try daylight. And we can also look at the camera profiles. Okay. Let's see. Let's see if there is a landscape one. There is. Okay, so look at landscape. Landscape ones usually give you more blue and green. And I'm going to go right to that one here. Okay, now that it's given me more contrast, I don't need to pull this down as much. Okay. Still checking on that histogram. Keeping the clipping. So I'm just toggling J with my finger to turn off these clipping warnings. Okay. So as you can see, clipping, drag it down until it's not clipping. Okay. I feel like even though the trees are leaning that way, I still feel like they're tilting a little bit. So I might do something with a correction. And I do want a little bit of blacks. So we don't have any black right now. Let's just come in until we get some black clipping. See that? Just a little bit of clipping. Okay, so that's just fixing the contrast. Okay, so that's just develop. That's it. Okay. Now let's move to some of the others. Okay, landscape is a good one to use here because obviously it's a landscape. Be really careful with this foliage enhancer because you don't want neon trees and grass. And always bring this one down. I always bring it to about minus 30, 32. Okay, but keep this one low because it goes crazy real fast. Okay. All right, so let's hop in and see what we can do about this sky. I feel like these are crooked and they still want to lean more. I don't know why. I feel like that's more straighter. I might take off some of the bottom, but let's see what we can do about this sky. So when we go into sky replacement, it will give you some suggestions. You have to pick the right sky. Okay, this is already, it's overcast. There's not a lot of shadows. So picking a sky where that would be the same. Okay, so you need to pick something that's going to match. So let's try one of these burst of drama ones. Because a big fluffy clouds and a big blue sky is not going to match on this image, I don't think. Give it a second to pop in here. Okay, so see how that gives us a bit more drama, right? We could even go with something that looks stormy, which might be kind of neat. I know that I've got lots of things here. Let's see if I got storms. Power of nature. I've got lots of skies. Okay, so we could get a stormy sky. A little too much. I think I like the previous one. I think I liked one of these ones. Let's just try something with clouds. Even that works, okay? So see how you don't need a lot, but it has to match the sky. It has to match the foreground. Kind of like this one. Right? The light is coming from this side of the trees, so that's the next thing. So you need to match the quality of light. So if the quality of light in the image is soft, meaning there's no harsh shadows, don't put a sun in your sky, right? It has to be cloudy. Second of all, the direction of light has to match. Which is the direction of light here? Where's the light coming from here? There's one key indicator, okay? Tell me in the chat, where's the light coming from? The left or the right? Where's the vote? Anybody? I know we have about a 10-second delay between live stream and YouTube, so I'll just keep talking. Rob says the left. Anybody agree? Stephanie says left. Left. Guys are smart. You're absolutely right. So everybody's saying left, and you're all correct. Okay. There's two indicators here. There's a slight shadow on the ground, but if you look at the tree, look at where the shadow is. Okay. Especially right here. This part is dark. This part is light. Okay. Same here. Dark, light. Always look for the shadows. Okay. And they may not be on the ground. So the light coming from over here is correct. Okay. Now we want to make sure that it's all the way to the bottom, to the ground. Okay, so we're going to check the orientation. Let me zoom in just to 50%. I want to make sure that it's on the ground. Okay, that's moving it side to side. That one always gets me. Okay, so I'm making sure it's down below the horizon, which it is. Might move it down just one more. Okay. And then we can refine the mask. Okay, so where we want to look for under mask refinement is there anything in here where it's missing around the trees? And it looks pretty good. Okay, fixed details will bring us back some of the trees. Okay, so if the trees have been taken over, see, we can see a little bit of stuff happening here that's maybe not quite filled in correctly. Okay. There we go. See that changing things? See how that fixed that problem there? Okay, so close gaps and fix details are the sliders you want to work with here. If you do global and increase global, it's going to take over more of the trees. Okay, that actually looked pretty good in this case. So I would move around the edges and check the edges of the trees. Right, and that looks pretty good to me. Let's back out. Okay, now scenery lighting is another key to making the new sky match the old image. Okay, so give it some relight strength and saturation, because what it will do is take the color from the sky and add it into the image. Okay, in this case, let's go quite far. Right, can you see what it's doing? Right, this last one, we don't have any reflections. This last one I use a lot, and that is atmospheric haze. Okay, so when you drag this up, it basically just softens the sky. Okay, so if your sky is too dark, okay, it's kind of like bringing the shadows up on the sky. Right, you can also brighten it, right? Or we could go the opposite way and make it really dark and stormy. But notice when I brighten it, it's affecting the entire image. That's because of those relight sliders, okay? So we could go either way. So I kind of like it lighter, like so. And you also want to check the focus. So what I would recommend is go look at the horizon, okay? Here, the horizon is blurry. So you don't want a sky that is sharp. So what I'll do is do -1 or -2 or +1 or +2 on the sky, okay? Because the sky is further into infinity than this background, so the sky should be blurry, okay? Just to make it match a little bit better. And of course, we can also shift the color. I find if you wanted stormy sky, adding this little bit of yellow kind of gives you that like thunderstorm kind of feel, right? So we could go either way. But there's a very dramatic type of look, okay? I'm gonna warm it up a tiny bit. But look what a difference that makes, okay, with the sky. I am going to crop this a little bit because I feel like the bottom, there's too much green here again. So likewise with the water on the glacier, when you have a lot of foreground, it just feels like the subject is far away. Okay, why is it not letting me? Ah. Let's try that again. It's not letting me go up from the top. Okay, let's try that again. There we go. So it feels like the subject is far away. Now we have him a little bit closer. Wait for it. There we go. Okay, so I've changed the aspect ratio, but that's fine. Okay, so there's our before and after. Now we can go further with it. Okay, so we can add some structure, right, which is going to bring those trees and bring out all the gnarly bits. Okay, so we can bring some structure, but I want it just on the trees. Okay, so let's try Mask AI and see what it comes up with. Rob's making bad jokes. Thanks for the thumbs up. It gives us more exposure. That's a groaner. Okay, so now we've got sky and natural ground. So watch what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to choose natural ground. Okay, and it's picked almost the ground, but got a little bit of the tree. And then I'm going to pick sky. Okay, it's done pretty well. Then I'm just going to invert it. Okay, so that is my selection. And now I can just adjust it a little bit. So I definitely want to make sure that I get this part of the tree. Okay. And I don't want to add structure to the background. So I'm going to remove it from the background bits. Okay, so I use the Mask AI to get close. And then I'm just refining it. It did a pretty good job up here in the sky. There's a few other bits in here that, it's gotten that I don't necessarily want it to sharpen or add structure to. So just refine it a little bit, like this mess in here. Okay, and I don't think I want this part in the background. Okay, oh, just the tree. Okay, so you can get really specific with your masking. Okay, we could go really precise, but it doesn't have to be that precise. Okay, that's basically what I wanted, was the trees. Once you get it where you want it, make sure to copy it. Okay, so now I'm just sharpening the trees. Okay, see that? Let me come in here to 50%. So we're adding structure to the trees. Okay, let's go even more. And now that we have that, we can do details as well. So let's check medium details, looking at the bark, okay? Okay, sharpening and masking. We don't have to worry about masking because I'm going to use that copy and paste, okay? Ooh, look at the bark. Okay, what that does. Okay, so let's paste that mask in. And let's see what it's doing. So see the tree and the details? Look at the bark. So remember, those 4 things that I talked about, grabbing your eye, right? The things that take your attention are what you want on the subject. So you want the subject to be sharp, to have contrast, to have color, if there is color in the image, right? And to not have bright bits in the background. Okay, so we're trying to minimize those things on other stuff, right? So as Rob said, yes, shout out. Giving us a thumbs up on our videos does help us to reach more people on YouTube, and then more people can learn about our channel and join us every week as well. So please give us thumbs up and share the videos on your social media outlets. So share it on your Pinterest or your Facebook or Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days, to share it with other people who enjoy photography. And we appreciate you being here. Sheila says, the masking tools in Neo are the easiest I've used. Pretty good results. Yes, exactly. No, they're not all my skies, Sheila. My skies are, I've got a set of my own skies. We could take a look at those as well, right? I don't have one that I think fit for this image, though, right? All right, so now see what we've come from? Okay, so we've gone the opposite way of the snowy images, right, that were overexposed or that were underexposed. This one was overexposed, and now we've solved the sky issue. So Oscar, does that help you with the sky replacement? What challenges were you having? You said you were having a challenge getting the sky. I think if you do the raw processing first and bring the exposure down, then Luminar will have an easier time defining the difference between the trees and the sky, right? So when I darkened it, the trees stand out more, right? Thanks, Stephanie. And of course, I think I'm going to add some mystical on this one. Actually, I might add some atmosphere on this one. So maybe some fog to go with the dramatic background sky. Let's try the different ones. Okay, it's fog sort of in the middle ground there. I'm looking for maybe foreground fog. No. See, this is why I'm not crazy about this one. I almost never use it. Yeah. See, I'm not crazy about it. Takes away what I wanted to do with the trees, right? Which is sharpen them. I could just put it on the foreground, I suppose. Which one gives me foreground? No. Nah, it's not speaking to me. No, not speaking to me. So tried it, didn't work. Okay. Okay, what else might I do with this one? We did landscape. Yeah, probably just to finish up, maybe a vignette. Okay, so dark edge vignette on this one for more drama. And once again, because I've cropped it, right, I need to come in a little bit and then redo the subject placement. So if I want it in the middle, but this is a great thing because we can actually, place the vignette off center. So if I want to darken this part more, I can have it off center, which is perfect. Okay, so I can darken that bright part of the sky more so. Another one we could try on here is actually dramatic. Dramatic is really neat. You can add contrast. Look at that. Okay. It does lower the saturation, but I would keep that up a little higher. There's some drama there. Okay. So dramatic is another good one. And ultimately, this actually might look good in black and white, believe it or not. I love stick trees. Look at that. I love stick trees in black and white. Okay. And then we can go crazy with making the trees stand out. Okay. Usually what I'll do is I'll increase the yellow and darken the green. Right. Something like that. Get that. I think that's really cool. Actually, I think it's really cool. Maybe I'll go the other way. There we go. Something like that. Okay. And then I would do some toning on this one to give it some, maybe an antique look. Ooh, I have an idea. I love a good burgundy gold split tone. So I'm putting the highlights as yellow-ish. Okay, so there's yellow. Okay. Shadows, kind of this burgundy color. Or we could go shadows blue. Blue tone. Blue and yellow is another split tone that I do a lot. Right? Kind of feels spooky as well, right? And the trees are kind of spooky, so I'm kind of going with that, right? See that? I'm going to give it a little more. There we go. A little more oomph. A little more oomph on there. I always bring the saturation up to get the color. So I want to make sure it's yellow. Right? So don't be afraid to go higher with these things to get the color right. And then you can always dial it back. Right? But I kind of like that. I kind of like that. They look spooky, right? And now let's do mystical. Actually, I might do glow, and let's do Orton effect. Because Orton effect makes dark things glow more than light things, right? So it kind of gives it that spooky effect as well. Okay, there's Orton effect. Maybe. Not sure yet. Let's try mystical. No, this adds more drama. Let's go mystical. See, look at, you can actually darken the shadows then. Okay. Yeah. Cool. All right. So there, I took it a very different direction, right? Because the light was really flat. And I think changing it to black and white gives it a lot more drama. Yes, I could have masked the fog into the just the foreground. Yes. Could you do a dodge and burn manual fog? Possibly, but really what you need is dehaze. So if we go into dehaze, that's in the landscape tool, right? And yeah, there's no minus dehaze on this one. I wish there was. Let's just try your method here. Okay, so if I'm doing lightning and I'm gonna bring the amount way down, we need a really, really soft brush. And I always paint like 10%-ish, okay? So it doesn't give you the same effect, right? It just lightens, right? But if we want to brighten the trees up a little bit, we certainly can do that while I'm here. And let's do the same. Let's darken. I want to darken this sky a little bit. Another great one to darken when you have highlights that are too bright is the super contrast. Okay, so highlight contrast. See how that brings the highlights down? It gives more contrast to the highlights. It's kind of adding some color, which is doing a weird thing. So I'm going to keep that down a bit lower. See what that's doing? I want it just on this part of the sky, though, because I like what it's doing over here. But I don't like what it's doing up top. So I'm just going to paint it in where I want it. See that? It just gives that little bit more right there. Okay. Like so. So all of the tools at your disposal, use all of them. Let's see what her dodge and burn did. Okay, so that was mystical. Dodge and burn. Yeah. Not really fog. But there you go. A theme for next week. Good question. I'm not sure I did a good thing with the dodge and burn there, so I'm just gonna dial it back. Theme for next week. Somebody had suggested sunsets again. I did that a while ago. We've got some nice sunsets submitted. But that's a really cool image, Oscar. You know, play around with that, and I think it's really, really lovely in black and white. I think you're right. Yep, it really is. Whenever you have something that has a lot of texture like that, and I love these old, you know, trees, like worn out trees or stick trees like that in black and white. Love it. Hey, Holly. Yeah, awesome. Give that a go. Okay, theme for next week. Should we do a vote and then call it a day? We've talked about exposure. We did sky replacement. I didn't do any Lightroom edits today, but has everybody gotten something today? What did you learn today? Put one thing in the chat that you learned today, whether it be about a particular tool, whether it be about something that I talked about. Whether I talked about camera stuff. What did you learn today? Tell me in the chat. So themes, possible themes. Let's see. What have I not done? Let's see if we've got some sunsets. I do have some sunsets that we haven't done, so we could do sunsets. What other possible things? Another one I did a while back was shadows, which was kind of fun. I don't want to do that one again. We just did landscape. I do have a few more blue hour. I got some birds as well. We could do birds. Give them a choice. Can you do a poll real quick, Rob? Oh, masking. Somebody wants to do just masking. Well, we're not quite at oh yeah, I guess we are at Valentine's. Curves, masks. These are the things that people are learning. So exposure, camera settings discussion was helpful. Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie. I like to mention those things because, you know, I can show you how to correct things in processing, but wouldn't you rather fix it in camera so you don't have that problem again next time, right? Learned about masking. Awesome. These are things they've learned about, Rob. Sheila said, I wonder if you could ever use inner light vignettes. And today you got the answer. Awesome. Using the exposure slider versus others. Awesome. A session on layers or composites. I like that idea, Rob. I like that idea. Because I did some neat things recently. Let me show you what I did with some images that I took in the studio. Look what I did. So this was actually an accident. So we had the background lit. I had the background lit and then the main light didn't go off. So what happened was, let me just show you here. What happened was, this is the original image. Okay, so that's what happened. So the background light fired and the main light didn't fire for whatever reason. So I went with it, right? And I made it into a silhouette. And then using layers, I made these. Okay, so I kind of played with the bird. And she's actually, she's got a business and she's going to send me her logo and going to put her basically inside herself. I also flipped it as well. Right. All right, let's do composites and layers then, Rob. That seems to be something that people are interested in. So, composites and layers next week. And if you would like to see me put two images together, you can submit two images using the form. Please share the link to the form, Rob. Um, you can submit two images, and if you have more than two images, just do the form again and send another two. Okay, so if you say, okay, I want these four combined, we can certainly try. Another one that I did a composite on, I think I showed this one before, was the wrestler that I did, where I added smoke to the background. So, and then I put some text on for her as well as a poster. But we could do that in Luminar and in Photoshop. Right? Layers would provide more familiarity with Luminar for people who are main editors Lightroom. Yes, absolutely. And I also find that layers are easier to work with in Luminar than in Photoshop. I mean, of course, Photoshop can do a lot more, but it's easier, right? Yes, I will do both, Stephanie. I will do both, right? There are some things that you can do in Photoshop. Well, there's lots of things you can do in Photoshop you can't do in Luminar. Like one thing is liquify. You can't do liquify, but I can show. Well, I can show how to do the fun thing. Where's my Luminar? Let me show you something here. Let me see. I showed this in the Neon and Glow. No, I don't have it. I'll show you how to do a neat trick with the Neon and Glow tool and layers. So we'll play around with that, where it makes like the twisty thing, right? I'm not going to show you that today. I don't know where I put it. I don't know where I put it. It's in here somewhere. I've edited lots of pictures. So let's see. No. Let me just scroll through. I'll know it if I see it. I may have undone it. I may have undone it. I may have saved a preset too. I'll show you how you can make a preset. I can't find it. Well, we're gonna do layers and composites next week. So send in your images, and remember to again subscribe to the channel. There's a notifications bell. If you click that bell when you're in YouTube or your phone, it will pop up and tell you when we have new videos and also when we're going live. So same time next week, we'll be back for layers and making photo composites. Till then, take care and have a great week.